Welcome to The Line. As we sat down to tape this week's show, the legislature was still in session in Santa Fe. Now, we'll continue to follow the outcome of the special session, but our panelists are ready to weigh in on the broader issues that brought those lawmakers back to the Roundhouse in the first place to work on that state budget. Now, we want to hear from you. Tell us what you think about the special and the budget deal. Go to NewMexicoInFocus.org or find us on Facebook or Twitter. This week, I'm joined at the table by Merritt Allen of Vox Optima LLC. Former New Mexico House Minority Whip Daniel Foley is here. Former Lieutenant Governor Diane Dennis is here. And Sophie Martin, attorney and editor of DukeCityFix.com. Now, Lieutenant Governor, glad to have you back. It's been a while, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to sort of figure out here since this is in motion, but at its basic level, what we have right now is the tax situation as proposed by Jason Harper. The governor wanted to look at this tax proposal and kind of have them work on it. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Was that the right thing to do? Is this too complicated for a special session, a tax overhaul?
Well, depending on whether you're pitching or catching, as we say in Lake County,
Nice.
It's always tough to figure out the right time.
Right.
But I do think the fact that there was a 400-page bill that hadn't been read by the
Yes.
legislators, the basics, I think, were being tossed around back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm amazed about is that we're back in this special session. The governor wants bipartisanship, but the budget she got before was pretty bipartisan in both houses,
That's right.
especially in the Senate. So it's tough to know what that phrase bipartisan really means in terms of what she wants to come to her. So it's I don't think it's the right time for the tax reform bill. And we have some deadlines coming up. Chaos abounds at our universities and our institutions of higher learning. We need to solve this problem.
That's right. Merritt, pick up on that if you would. This idea of Democrats had a plan. Speaker Egolf, by the way, speaking of the tax proposal, announced a couple days ago that's just not a non-starter. We're not going to do that. However, there was some wiggle room opening for other types of revenue enhancements out there, but it looks like that's not really happening right now. Where does that leave us here? Are we back in court here in a little bit and we carry on?
Just to repeat myself again and again, all we want from the legislature at this point is to pass a budget.
Right.
And if we're a small state, the governor's there, legislature's there, why can't we get there? And this brinkmanship makes me crazy. And at the same time, I think it brings up other issues. We're in a state that doesn't pay our legislature. They meet 60 or 30 days a year.
Right.
And the political climate is such that in a major metro area, you're going to have to raise $100,000 for an unpaid volunteer job, where you may get called back and called back and called back. We're getting what we pay for. And I think this level of brinkmanship is not necessarily reflective personally of the governor, but those in her administration who are focused on what they're going to be doing and the legacy they want to leave in their next job.
I would agree with you 100%. Very interesting point there. Daniel, the idea that the food tax was floated by the governor, even though she's very much opposed to any kind of tax at all. What does this put us? We sort of come around full circle. We talk about these taxes we don't want to have. We try everything else, and we come right back to the same taxes that we have said previously we don't want to have because they're regressive. Are we out of ideas here on?
Well, not necessarily. I think not to go off on the food tax tangent. I think that we've talked ad nauseum about the food tax here. We repealed that when I was there under the Richardson administration. I didn't vote for that. We talked about helping the poorest of the poor, but the poorest of the poor we know aren't paying a food tax. They're getting food stamps. They're getting assistance on that, and so we shifted that burden. And it's a deep conversation, but I think it highlights the problems in New Mexico. Every tax deal in New Mexico, if you go up there, there's pages and pages of loopholes, exemptions, people that hired a lobbyist to get away out of it, that we don't have a real tax system. We've got a system of whoever has the best lobbyist doesn't have to pay a tax. And so we do have to have this conversation. I'm not sure if right now is the conversation. I do need to say, Gene, I've been a very staunch critic of the New Mexico State Supreme Court, and I was amazed and I applauded them for ruling the way they ruled on that hearing when it came to this, because I think it's right. I think the governor did this they have there's a legislative remedy. It's
right.
to override. It's to do it.
right.
Whatever happens, we have a way to handle this. I'm not sure we're going to get it fixed. The governor says she wants a bipartisan approach to this. We all know what that means, right? Whenever anybody says, I want a bipartisan approach, that means...
It means it's between
right.
the governor and the legislature, not between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Right.
Good
And so,
point.
and so, then the speaker says, well, the stuff you want's really DOA. So, I think that's what's going to happen is we have the universities in an uproar. They should be. There's unbelievable problems. Not only are there problems, the governor and through the last budget process has swept all the excess money any public schools
right.
have,
It's gone.
cities have,
That's right.
the colleges have. So they don't even have a rainy day fund at the schools
right.
to do this. Come the day of the budget's not fixed, they don't have a savings account to go after. Something's going to have to be done. I think my prediction is you may quite possibly see one of the first moves with a continuing resolution in New Mexico where they say, look, we can't reach this right now, but we've got to do something for the schools, so how do we come up with a
Yeah, but the clock's ticking on that. We have to the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, well, I
right?
think that you may see them say something like, and I think that there's some ability to go back. What I think you may hear them talk about is the law that says, we in the Constitution, we are not allowed to wipe away, legislative, we can't wipe away an organization
Right.
by defunding it.
Right.
If we did that, they get 25% less funding than they got the prior year. And we can do that, and over the course of 4 years, effectively, you could do away with them. So what they may come up with is a continuing resolution under that guidance and say, listen, if we don't have this, we're going to zero.
Gotcha.
So by Constitution, you get 75% of what we gave you last year. You have to operate on that 75%. It's not going to be comfortable. Wow. It's not going to be good. But I'm not sure that with this administration and the staff and the people they have and the agenda and the legacy building they have, a fairly new speaker that's trying to establish himself, very progressive Democrat speaker. I'm just not sure these two have any opportunity to meet together, which I think I'll finish by saying I think leads us to who I think the bright star is, and I think it's Mary Kay Papin and Peter Wirth.
Okay.
I think both of those two folks have the ability to see past the noise. I served with Peter Wirth. I think he's got some reliable people, Joseph Cervantes,
Sure.
folks like that I think the Senate's going to have to take a real leadership role in.
That's interesting. Good run there. That's interesting. Sophie, speaking of education, Dan brought up as part of the thing there, Randy Weingarten was just in town, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, in this idea that it has gone out nationwide that we have effectively defunded our higher education.
Oh,
and
yes, very
she's-
much.
and,
In the
and
Washington
she-
Post, et cetera.
Exactly, and she's on it. And does that change the debate locally at all? Is it your sense that the folks in Santa Fe have heard the echo bounce from the Washington Post and are now
I
reacting?
think that's a good question. I mean, I think the people who are most likely to react to that kind of feedback are probably the legislators, because they're more likely, I think, to hear from their constituents on these particular issues and to take that into account.
Right.
The state auditor's office has put out a report talking about, among other things, deadlines that are absolutely necessary for our state to meet in order to retain our already not exactly stellar bond rating, and also to prevent ourselves from going into partial government shutdown. And Tim Keller's office has said basically that the deadline for the state as a whole is June 22nd. That's really soon. It's less than a month from now. But that for higher ed, it's sooner. It's June 1st.
Right now,
And
basically.
yes, essentially right now. I
Yeah.
mean, we get through this weekend and
That's right.
everybody gets, paid at the end of the month, and that's the moment that
right.
we need to have this taken care of.
That's right.
And so it is dire for our universities.
And you have to be
right now.
careful. You have to be careful because the problem that's arising is we're playing chicken with someone that has nothing to lose, right? The governor can't run for anything. Governor's not running for re-election.
Yeah.
The governor is not. I mean, the governor right now has got basically a year and a half, 2 years left on her term. She can sit out and watch this out. If you're a state rep, you've got to be kind of shaking in your. I could tell you someone that's been there. You're kind of saying, hey, in this time, whatever she's done, because the one thing I will tell you, as someone who ran for office, people can harp about how bad they don't like a governor, whether it was Richardson or Martinez or Johnson, doesn't matter. But the minute they leave, they're not. It doesn't take long for your constituents to realize the constant in this whole deal is you. Right. And so, the governor, we're playing chicken. We're playing chicken with someone that's like,
Right.
I'm done. I don't have to ask the.
All right, I appreciate that, but
So
Lieutenant Governor, she
that's-
is playing
I
chicken,
just
but
want to
there's an
take
end game
exception.
here. Please, go
She
ahead.
can run for something else. And people should remember what she's done as governor if
Okay.
she tries to run for something else. That's really what.
Meaning statewide here
Yes,
in New Mexico.
yeah.
Okay. Just
There
a-
are other offices
Yeah.
to run for besides governor.
That's a good point.
Okay, so let me just say that, this whole robbing Peter to pay Paul,
Yeah.
the idea that we're taking money from the bonds to support the reserve and the bond rating is a really, the economic development message that has been spread across the country for us is really abysmal. Shutting down higher ed. We can sit around this table, we all know instances where people have not been able to hire the best people these last 3 months or
exactly
give
right.
people contracts
Yep.
because of the veto of the higher ed budget. The bond rating is going to be critical. Budgets are supposed to be aspirational and they're supposed to be visionary. They're not supposed to be about how can I take money from infrastructure to shore up reserves.
Right.
Budgets, and frankly, this governor has never gone from being a prosecutor to being a governor. She has stayed in that prosecutorial mindset almost her entire term. And so the blame goes back and forth. Blame the legislature blames her. And
Good point. Do you think we're headed for a shutdown possibility? Is there a small percentage
I
possibility
think,
here?
this is the first I've heard of a continuing resolution, but
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder, that would certainly spring up court battles about whether or not we've met our constitutional requirement to balance the budget for a fiscal year.
That's right.
Because the automatic answer in my mind would be no.
Right. Would you agree with that? Is that the automatic answer? Is that?
I think it's very scary. I mean, I think the continuing resolution notion and the precedent for it in state law put out by Dan is very interesting, and certainly our country has run on a continuing resolution for 8 years.
For how long? Right, exactly.
So,
It's a good point.
it's certainly doable.
Right.
It works. What upsets me is, we're 20 years into a zero compromise mindset in politics, and it started in Washington during the Clinton administration and Speaker Gingrich, and it's wormed its way down, and finally in New Mexico, we've got it. And I think what this lack of dialogue and this no compromise policy has done is destroying our state. We are not able to competently run needed state agencies, even with a budget. We've seen that with SNAP. We're seeing that perhaps with the tax office. But if we can't even fund ourselves, if we can't even agree what we're going to spend money on for the next 12 months, really,
That's right.
it's not that much money.
That's right. Thank you. It is not that much
6.1
money.
million.
Exactly.
I want to go to the defense of the no compromise. I mean,
Okay.
the compromise. If you look at this last session and this session,
Right.
there has been a compromise within the legislative
Absolutely,
ranks.
I agree.
And so they're not that
right.
far apart.
You're right.
The Senate voted for the budget with just 4
It was single
no
numbers in
votes.
dissent.
Yeah.
Low single
And
numbers
the
in
House,
dissent.
about a third of the Republicans went with the Democrats
right.
on the most recent votes in the last couple of days. So I think that we have a chance to retrieve ourselves from that total no compromise. But the person who needs to come on board is the governor. She needs to look at it and listen to her members of the party. And I want to give a shout out to not just Peter and Mary Kay, but Stuart Engel. That triangle of people have really worked very well together to
right.
try to find.
You just reminded me of
resolution.
something, by the way. The name Mary Kay Papen came out just a little bit ago, and I've forgotten that she has, in fact, told the governor, no, we're not going to talk about your desires for UNM and hiring.
That's right.
What do you make of that, Sophie? That's an interesting thing to come out with before the special actually started.
I think not just from Mary Kay Papen, but from many legislators, we've basically heard, I think to echo what Meredith said, we have one job here. The budget is our job. The regions,
Right.
You can hold off on the regions. We can get there during the regular session. We don't have to do it now. And my sense is that the electorate agrees with that.
Right, I would agree with that too. Now we'll have to end it there. Up next on the line, we'll talk about management of finances inside the UNM Athletics Department.